Number 4.
So, I'm 14 years old. My mum trusts me a fair amount when I use the internet. I was in with long arms and legs. They looked too long for his body, and he was wearing a dirty white tank top with even filthier jeans with holes. He was also wearing oversized red and dirty Converse shoes. They looked like fucking clown shoes. He looked about 30 pounds underweight, and he was very tall, about 6'2", I would say. Even sitting, he was way taller than my 8-year-old self. I began walking a little faster, practically jogging. I also began singing aloud. It was the way I used to cope with my being scared. In hindsight, that was incredibly foolish. To my horror, I heard the chair creak. The man stood up. When I looked back, he smiled, a disgusting yellow-toothed ear-to-ear grin. His teeth also looked large, almost like horse teeth. He began taking large strides towards me. I began to run. I was short, and 3 of my steps equaled 1 of his. My asthma also kicked in. My eyes were blurry from the rain rushing in them. I was running blindly, while this grinning hillbilly effortlessly gained on me. Like a cliché horror movie, I tripped. It was bound to happen. I was wheezing and blindly running for my life. Tears stung my eyes, and I scrambled to my feet covered in mud and continued running. I finally reached my grandparents' RV. I beat on the door of my grandparents' RV. The man was about 5 feet away from me now. I began screaming, sobbing, and banging even harder on that door. I began to pray aloud. I thought that this was it for me. Until my tired grandma opened the door, and I practically stampeded her to the ground. I shut and locked the door. I hugged her, soaking wet and covered in mud. My grandma, knowing I do in fact have a very overreactive imagination, thought I was just scared of the dark and that my eyes were playing tricks on me. Frustrated, I told her to get Grandpa and to come see for herself.
"Oh, Brittany, there's nothing out here but animals for miles."
She entertained me though, and went outside without my grandfather and no weapon and in her bathrobe. But the man was gone, nowhere to be seen. I showed her the chair he was sitting on, and that didn't convince her. She told me to take a shower and to get some sleep. About 2 weeks later though, it was heard on the news that a man shot and killed his neighbour over the neighbour's son. Apparently, the neighbour was defending his 10-year-old son from this man. When my grandmother saw the mugshot of the man, her face turned white as a sheet. It perfectly matched my description. She ran into the RV's kitchen where I was making a bagel and hugged me. She hugged me for several minutes. She lightly explained the situation to me, leaving out details that may frighten me further. She believed me ever since that day. This has awakened a fear of clowns in me. My brain manifested the red shoes and the toothy yellow grin as a fucking clown. I still have nightmares to this day. I do always wonder though, what would have happened if that freak actually caught me? I thank God every day that I escaped.
Number 1.
So, about a month ago, I had my 5 friends over to my house for a party because I'm going to a different school soon. All was well until this guy walked past my house, slowly. He was jogging, but then he started walking. I didn't think anything of it. Maybe he was just cooling down. People like going for runs out here because it's quiet and there aren't many cars. I live in a really regional area and I have no neighbours for miles. I'm surrounded by cornfields since I'm in Indiana and all. We were in the front yard, sitting on the trampoline, playing Never Have I Ever. I watched the man pace back and forth in front of my driveway. I started to get weirded out, but I'm a paranoid person anyway, so I thought nothing of it. 5 minutes pass and he stopped. Now he's looking at me. I waved, thinking maybe he knew me, as our town is small and everyone really knows every other person. My boyfriend, Brent, then turned around and looked towards the road and looked at the guy. The guy then began walking up the driveway. Our driveway is really long, so that gave me plenty of time to get everyone to start running up to the house. We were running across my backyard, and the man was running behind us. We had about a 30-foot head start. I swung open the back door, and everyone hurried in. I fumbled with the lock and locked the door. Our porch doesn't have blinds because it's pretty much got windows everywhere. We ran upstairs into my room, which is above the porch. I heard him banging on the door.
"Let me in, you little bastards."
He began to mimic a little girl's voice.
"I want to play."
We were terrified. Who the hell was this man? What the hell did he want? Was he a child molester? What made the situation even worse was that my parents weren't home. They were over at a basketball game with my brother. Everyone over at my house was a girl, except for my boyfriend. I was bawling my eyes out, thinking we were going to die at 15. I was peeking at the window as everyone sat behind me, trying to get a glimpse. I heard glass break. I stopped crying almost instantly. I went into my parents' room, ever so silently. I grabbed a gun I knew my dad kept in his safe. I loaded it as he showed me, and I rushed back into my room. It felt really weird to be holding a gun, almost like I have too much power. I could take someone's life with this thing, and it horrified me. The whole situation did, to be honest. I gestured towards the window, still sniffling like an idiot. I unlatched it and slid it open, and ripped the screen open. Footsteps became louder in the distance. The roof over the porch was by my window, thank God. We helped Brent down the 6-foot drop so he could lift everyone down. When it was my turn, I heard the man coming up the stairs. I hurried out the window, shoving the gun in my waistband. Brent hoisted me down, and I pulled out the gun again. We all didn't know what to do from there. We couldn't call the cops, there was no cell reception out here. "The tree," one of my friends whispered. One by one, we jumped onto the branch. It was easily a 4-foot jump, and if you miss, it's a 10-foot fall. I was the second to last to jump, Brent behind me. I urged Brent, and he jumped, and the branch snapped. He grabbed the branch under him, and lifted himself up. The man was in my room. He was walking really slowly, a rhythmic kind of thud, with almost a full second in between thumps. He flicked the light on, as I switched the gun off of safety. He popped his head out of the ripped screen, and I froze. He was bald, medium built, and maybe around 50. He was sweaty, literally dripping in sweat, and dirty. I could smell him 6 feet away. I was mortified to say the least.
"Wait, I want to play,"
he said, grunting as he fell back onto the floor in my room, throwing his foot out of the hole. I was near the edge, and by then, everyone had climbed down the tree, and they were yelling for me to jump and saying they'd catch me. I'm not a small girl, mind you. I weigh about 130 pounds, so catching me would not be easy. He began to climb out of the hole in the screen, and I shot the gun, not aiming. Rachel started crying, but I had only hit the house. His eyes were huge when he realized I was armed. I jumped off the roof, and they caught my torso, but not my legs. They had formed a circle, and my legs went through the middle of it where their fingertips met. My ankle was bent at an awkward angle, and I knew I had broke it. It was excruciatingly painful, but I was too terrified to notice. The man darted out of my room, and I saw him run through our yard, so he must have used the front door to escape. Emmy ran inside and got the landline phone, and she called my parents, and then the police. The scariest part is, my parents always warned me that there was a guy that lived not too far away from us who had molested his own daughters, and was sent to prison for it. He finally got released from jail about 10 years ago, and was allegedly following kids home in his van, and told one of his victims to be good as she was running behind a local bar. He's never done anything since, or at least that we know of. I'm just thankful I had a weapon, because if I didn't, I would be dead, or a sex slave, or something worse. G'day mates, it's B-Buster here. Well, I hope you enjoyed the video guys. Thanks again to the Hive members that bravely shared their stories for us all to hear. And for the chance to have your story feature in a video, you can send your story to my email, which is in the description below. And be sure to keep them coming guys, as this channel relies upon your stories to continue. Also guys, please do me a little favour and just state in your email what your story is about in the description, and also provide me with a short written statement of consent just so that I can be above board with everything. And also remember to tell me in the email if you would like to remain anonymous, and please also change any names if you don't want particular names to be shared. It would be awesome if you could like, share, comment and subscribe if you're new. Don't forget to follow me on Facebook, Twitter and Instagram for updates throughout the week. Thanks again for tuning in guys, and as always, I'll see you mates in the next one. So this happened in August of 2015. A little backstory first. So, my family and I were going to Idaho for my birthday, and because there was a wedding that we were having to attend. I'm originally from Idaho, and when my best friend Chris heard I was coming, he decided we should do something while I was up there. He had found a sort of crater that, to our knowledge, a lot of people don't know about. We decided to go there with my friend Ryan and my cousin Stan to make a fire, cook hot dogs, drink soda, and just hang out and do what teenagers do. Now, on to the story. After the wedding, Chris picked me up last as I had to finish the wedding ceremony. We all started to drive towards Ryan's house so we could pick up his car. Since Chris's trunk was full, we needed to put the firewood in Ryan's car. So Ryan got his car, we loaded the firewood, and we drove to the hole. It was off of the main roads, and it led us to a very bumpy dirt road. When we got there, it was around 7 in the evening. I had never been there before, so I was surprised when I saw it could fit several dozen cars, maybe even a little more. The best way I can describe this place is that it was a bowl-shaped crater with bushes running along the sides and the outside of it. We decided to start the fire. It took us a bit, but we got it going. I started recording our attempt to start the fire when I heard Ryan say,
"There is someone here."
I stopped recording and looked. There was a car reversing slowly until it was about 5 feet away from the edge of the crater. I wish I could say what type of car it was, but I'm not great with cars. The best way I can describe it is that it looked like a 2011 GMC Yukon Denali. We watched it for a minute, but nothing ever happened. No one ever got out. Nothing. So we went back to what we were doing. We were getting set up when we realized that we forgot the chairs. Ryan decided to drive to Stan's house with him so he could grab the chairs and so he could grab his contact case since he was going to crash at Chris's house for the night. It hadn't gotten dark and it was maybe 7:30. Ryan and Stan got into Ryan's car and drove past the parked car above us. They drove by it slowly and then kept going. At that time, it was just myself and Chris trying to keep the fire from burning out. I kept my eye on the car as it was making me feel sort of uneasy. I saw that there was a person in the passenger seat and a person in the driver's seat. They kept looking down at us for about a second before looking away. I kept thinking to myself, maybe they're waiting for us to leave. At this point, it was starting to get a little dark. The car was still there. I then heard the engine of the car start and I looked up, but the car wasn't even running. I brought it up to Chris and he did not know what to make of it. More time passed. I called Stan and asked where they were. They said that they were putting the chairs into the car as we spoke. When I hung up, Chris and I noticed that there was a light coming from the car. I could have sworn it was a flashlight beaming down at us. Chris said maybe it was a lighter. We kept waiting and it was getting darker. The dark car was beginning to blend in with the night. I once again heard the car start. I looked up once again, and nothing. I called Stan. I asked him where he was, and he said he was picking up sandwiches. I told him that the car was still there, and that I could have sworn that they were watching us. Stan asked me if they came back to the car.
"What do you mean?"
I asked.
Myself and Ryan, when we were beginning to drive to my house, pulled up slowly to the car and looked in. There was nobody in there. I looked up at the car again, and I saw strange movement from the passenger side window, almost like an arm bending in a very strange and abnormal direction. "Dude, they are in there. I just saw them."
Stan assured us that they would be there soon. It was now nearing 9 o'clock. They had left over an hour ago. We could no longer see the car in the night. As we sat there, watching our fire, I could not stop looking at the direction of the car. It was far too dark. The brushes and the bushes were making a bunch of noise from the wind. It sounded like someone was trying to slowly walk around them without making any noise. After a few minutes of this, I called Stan again. They were at the gas station, right down the road. I was unsettled. There was nothing we could do but wait to see if anyone emerged from the darkness. I looked over at Chris and said, "You know where your keys to your car are, right?" Chris replied, "Yeah, they're over on the driver's seat." I looked and I saw the window roll down, so I knew we were good if we had to run. Just then, we heard a car coming down the dirt road. Ryan and Stan were back. As they drove past the car abruptly started and it sped down the dirt road. We explained the entire situation to them. They assured us that nobody was in the car when they looked. We spent another hour there telling stories and talking, but we always had our guards up. We then decided to go home. We packed up our stuff and left. There are still things that don't make sense. Why did we see them looking at us multiple times? Why did they show up a few minutes after we did? What was that strange movement we saw? Why did they speed away? Why didn't Ryan and Stan see them when they were inspecting the car before they left? I'll never know, and quite frankly, I'm not sure I want to know.
Update.
A few months later, I got a call from Chris. Chris went back there the day before with a couple of friends of ours. I wasn't there because I was back at home. According to him, they went to the pit for the same reasons we did. While they were there, they heard noises which sounded like a car off in the distance trying to start, but since it was dark, they couldn't see anything. It happened so frequently that they actually timed it. The car engine sound happened every minute and 2 seconds. I remember when I heard it when I was with them, the sound of a car turning on a few separate times. After a while, it stopped. As they were putting out the fire, they heard a horrific woman scream off in the dark somewhere. They ran out of there and drove off. When Chris told his older brother of this experience, he said while he was there with some friends, it sounded like people were running around in the darkness, but they never saw anything.
Number 2.
It was 2013. I was 15 years old and just heading into the end of my high school years. My parents decided to move house that spring, and since we couldn't afford the rent of the other place, we moved in late April of that year to a relatively big 2-story house out in the countryside, about an hour out from the nearest town. We were surrounded by fields, had only one neighbour about 50 acres away from our property, just an angry farmer and his angry mastiff who hated people. We took it though, and moved in the next day. The house always had this creepy vibe to it, and everyone noticed it when they came in. I, for one, always got the chills upstairs. I thought it was just the layout and the fact that there was only one light up there in the hall. I never went to the bathroom at night once I was in bed. I just stayed there, not moving, and always feeling that suspense that someone is coming, or the intense stare of someone. I naturally just tried to live with it. So, my experience that led me to make my parents move again happened on a weekend in July. It was raining. My parents and 3 younger brothers had gone to my grandparents. I, being an introvert, chose to stay home to play games, so they left and usually would be home by 6 p.m. I was alone in the house, and about 4 hours in, it was 3 p.m, the chills came over me, and I kept hearing strange banging noises coming from upstairs. I thought, it's just the wind and the rain. In the house with me, I had my 3 dogs. I brought them into the game room, which was at the front of the stairs. They followed me everywhere, so I knew nobody could sneak up on me. But then, as I'm walking back and forth from the kitchen, I have to pass the stairs each time. And every time, I kept getting this nervous feeling of some sort of intense stare. Again, almost like if somebody was there ready to hurt me. So, cautiously, I tried to ignore it. The bangs continue, and I get scared. It sounded like a thump, like something hitting a wall or doors. My dogs were noticing it too, and all 3 of them can sleep during the thunderstorm, so this was unusual for them. My biggest dog, Moe, started barking and howling too. That just made me even more scared. So, I tried to be brave, and I made one more trip to the kitchen for a drink. But this time, my dogs didn't follow me. They just stayed at the back of the room, away from the door. I hurried it up, got my drink, and then it hit me. The feeling of terror and panic overwhelmed me. I couldn't breathe, and my mind just focused on getting back to the room so I could lock the door. And, as if instinct guided me, I panicked, and then froze, and slowly moved my gaze up the stairs. And at the top was a man. A giant man, staring at me with wide eyes, growling at me like a deep rumble. I can hear it as clear as day, and it made me quiver. I stared at him in fear, slowly backing up until he started thumping down the stairs at me, yelling,
"Fuck off, you whore. Die, you bitch."
And as quick as he starts, I dashed into the game room, slammed the door and locked it. I pushed the lounge in front of the door, closed and locked the windows, sat on the floor with my dogs and an air rifle, and phoned my dad. The phone connected. I screamed down the phone,
"Dad, there's someone in the house, and they came at me. I'm so scared, please, just come home."
After crying on the phone, I heard a voice from outside yell,
"Oh, alright, sorry to scare you."
in the deepest, most creepiest voice I have ever heard. I screamed, then only to see the very same man outside the window, smiling. My dog started barking and growling at him. I shot my brother's rifle 5 times, breaking little holes into the window with the pellets. But the man was gone. He fled across the road and into the field. I never saw him again. My parents came home about 20 minutes later, screaming my name, to find me on the floor crying. My dad explained and asked why the door was open and all the taps were running, and how he actually heard me on the phone but said he thought I couldn't hear him. It turns out that this guy was the neighbour, and a ladder was out the back of our window, and he climbed in and was smashing up the place upstairs. I later learned that he killed himself after this event. This experience scared me to the point where I sleep with a nightlight on, and I'm afraid to walk by stairs when alone or look out of the windows at night. I'm 18 years old now, and I still have nightmares about this. I can remember that man's face, wide eyes, rugged beard, dirty clothes, weird teeth, and a really thick accent. Number 1. Every summer, my family would go camping for a week up near Harrison Lake in British Columbia, Canada. It was around 1998, and I was around 13 or 14 years old, and this was also around the time that my family befriended another family whom we went camping with. They had 4 kids, and we also had 4 kids, which I was the youngest of. One day, while camping, the mother of the other family suggested that we go for a drive about an hour away to visit an old heritage building and a petting zoo. My family wasn't interested, but I was more than happy to be away from them for a while, so we hopped in their vehicle and rode off. We drove for what seemed like forever in a summer-scorched car with a bunch of kids that probably annoyed the hell out of their mother. Her 4 kids and I were all around the ages of 11 or 14. After driving up and down the mountainside, we finally arrive at a place called Kilby Historic Site. We popped out of the car and looked around the quiet little farmland area in the middle of nowhere. It was nothing too spectacular, just a few old buildings and some trees off to the side. Once we got inside the gate, we went over to the petting zoo to feed the goats and the hens. Sadly, I was too restless from the car ride to really give any interest to the animals. I went up to the mother and asked, "Is this all there is in this place?" She points to the main building over to the side. "There's still that place over there, let's go check it out." The main building had to be accessed by a ramp, which we trotted up and entered the building. We were then met by an old-style general store from the mid-1800s. We were also greeted by a lady behind the counter who was dressed in the appropriate attire for the time period. She gave us a speech about how this was an essential store back in the day, and the upstairs was a house that people lived in. You could imagine how disinterested a bunch of pre-teens would be at the idea of learning history. The lady, who clearly looked bored, probably didn't feel like giving her speech anyways, so she suggested that we look around upstairs. The 5 of us ambled up the stairs, while the mother and the lady stayed downstairs to chat. We reached the top of the blue stairwell to meet in the middle of a long hallway that stretched from one end of the house to the other. There were 4 rooms in total, but they were sectioned off with velvet ropes, but you could still peer into them. There was also a small alcove area with a table, chairs, and bookshelves at one end of the hallway. Because we could all see each other and the hallway was the only place we could walk, we knew we were all alone. With the exception of us, it was dead silent. We started inspecting the rooms, one by one. There was a master bedroom with a king-sized bed with a purple canopy which was strung up and the curtains were drawn. There was a glass case in the hallway with a wedding dress and lace gloves sitting next to it, presumably because it was worn by the lady of the house back in the day. Next was a child's room, having a small bed with papers and crayons on the floor. Nothing out of the ordinary. A bathroom resided beside that room. In it was an old copper tub with copper piping. There was one more room, and this room was by far the most interesting. This was right next to the open bookshelf area. The lights were off in this room, and the curtains weren't drawn, making the room pitch black with the exception of the light creeping in from the hallway. The door itself could only open a small portion due to it being tied with some twine, probably because they were out of velvet ropes. This room gave us all some serious chills. Looking into the room, from what we could see, there was a rocking chair and what looked like a body in the bed under the sheets. It gave us the creeps, but we didn't really pay it too much mind. We figured it was clearly fake. We'd pretty much seen everything, so we decided to head back downstairs to see if we could leave. The mother saw us coming back down the stairs and with an annoyed tone said,
"What? You're already done? We paid money to be here. Go look around some more and make it worth your while at least."
I couldn't see everyone else's face, but I'm sure we gave all the predictable preteen eye rolls. We marched back up the blue stairwell and begrudgingly decided to look around again. This is where things started to get really weird, because some things were different from the few minutes ago that had just passed while we went downstairs. One of the boys in the group called us all over. "Hey, look at this!" We went to inspect what he was pointing at. The curtains on the canopy in the master bedroom were previously tied up, but now were let down, and so were the curtains. We looked at each other dumbfounded, because we didn't see anyone go into any of the rooms, and we were all in eyesight of one another the whole time. We then noticed the papers on the floor of the child's room. They now had scribbles of crayon all over them when they were previously blank. We huddled and started to interrogate each other, but we couldn't do much finger pointing. All 5 of us were in the view of each other this whole time, so it couldn't have been us. We were certain we were alone as well, because it would have taken someone too long to pop out of nowhere, undo the canopy curtains, and draw on papers in record time without making a sound. That's when one of the girls in the group pointed to the glass case where the wedding dress was. The gloves had been turned around. Our blood collectively froze with the realization that no one would have been able to move those gloves from behind a glass case. We were silent for a moment when I had the brilliant idea of saying, if something is different in each room, then what about the dark room? I pointed to the end of the hallway as a hush fell upon the group, and we all huddled together and moved slowly towards the door. By bringing up the idea, I had become the appointed brave man of the group. So we stood at the door, peering into the dark room. But it was too dark to see beyond the bed and the rocking chair. I decided to undo the string and open the door all the way to reveal more of the room. It was like an old nursing room with tools on the table for surgery at the back. The rocking chair was facing towards us with only a small cushion tied to the backrest, so you could see that there was no one behind it. And the bed was to the right side of the room. We were so unnerved by the strange lump in the bed and afraid to enter the room that I turned around and grabbed a pencil that was on the table by the bookshelves. I aimed for the lump in the bed and threw the pencil. As the pencil made contact, it made a soft plastic thud, a sound that plastic mannequin torsos would make. We all breathed a great sigh of relief, but it was shortly lived. The rocking chair, which had been completely untouched, began to slowly rock back and forth. We all froze with our eyes glued to the chair, unable to move. It was then, from out of nowhere, we saw this gaunt, bony yellow hand slowly appear from behind the top of the rocking chair. It was as if someone was hiding behind it, but it was impossible since you could see through the back of the chair. It bent its fingers and grasped onto the back of the chair. Before we could see what it was going to do next, we all shrieked and ran down the hallway. As we ran through the blue stairwell, it seemed it was no longer blue, but had patches of rust everywhere. We hightailed it out of the building, down the ramp, and collapsed by a tree just outside the building. We started to ask each other and agreed that all 5 of us saw the hand. The mother then came out and questioned what had happened. As the 5 of us tried to explain to her what happened, the lady from the building came outside and approached us, hesitantly, before she interrupted and asked,
"You didn't see something, did you?
We all looked at each other, dumbfounded. The lady continued.
I was going to take my break, but I might as well tell you. That room up there is a replica of a situation that actually happened. There was an old lady who was dying of a disease, and that's the room they kept her in until she died. I sometimes hear footsteps in the hallways when I'm alone, downstairs, and every time I go into that room to change the bedsheets with my back turned away from the door, I can feel it standing in the doorway, watching me, waiting for me to look at it. But I never do.
We left that place shortly after, but the thing is, I'm now 30, and that experience hasn't left me. G'day mates, it's B-Buster here. Well, I hope you enjoyed the video guys. Thanks again to the Hive members that bravely shared their Number 4. I'm 19 and I'm in college. I have a roommate named Jason and we are happily living in our small yet affordable apartment, but it wasn't always like this. I had a different roommate in a different apartment. Mason was always an extrovert and usually messing with the wrong kind of people. He was getting drunk and stoned all the time. I'm an introvert, spending most of my time studying or reading, so we weren't the same at all, but we kind of unexpectedly were good friends. One night, when Mason was out, likely partying, I was in my bed on social media websites like Facebook and Instagram. I got a Snapchat from an unknown person. I looked at it, and it was just a wall. The caption was, "I'm watching you." I just assumed that it was one of Mason's stoned friends messing with me, so I blocked the profile and went to bed. The next morning, I continued with my usual routine, eating, class, and other daily stuff. I finished my day and was getting into bed when I saw a dim light from under my bed appear. I thought to myself, why would my phone go off now? I checked it, and it was another Snapchat from a different profile. This freaked me out again, but I assumed it was one of Mason's drunk friends again. It was the same picture and caption from one night ago. Now I was really freaked out. I, again, blocked the profile and went to bed. The next morning, I went to breakfast with my girlfriend and Mason. We were leaving when I got a snap from another blocked profile. This time, I asked if Mason knew who the account belonged to. He said that he was not familiar with the profile. I opened the message, and it was different this time. It was a picture of our apartment building, with the caption, "I know where you live." By now, I assumed that this was some type of cruel joke. There was no real way that someone could actually be stalking me. I blocked the profile and tried to forget about it. It worked for the next few days, as I didn't get any new messages from an unknown Snapchat profile. Until this one night. This unforgettable night. I was in my bed at 12:30, like usual, and I was on my phone, on Facebook, while I got another Snapchat. I was really pissed this time. I finally forgot about the odd Snapchats, and I was worried that they would start up again. But this Snapchat was different. This was a picture of my bedroom door. I flipped the fuck out and started screaming down my hallway to tell whoever was down there to get the hell out of my house. I heard nothing for about 5 minutes and started to calm down. Maybe Mason was just trying to freak me out. Also, all the other small apartments were the same layout, so I assumed that it was from another similar apartment or something. Unfortunately though, my story doesn't end there. I freaked out when I saw another Snapchat. I hadn't thought about blocking the profile. It was taunting me. I did not want to open the Snapchat. I waited and waited, debating if I should open the message. I'll always regret opening. I yelled,
"What the fuck?"
and darted out of the apartment and ran to my neighbor's, also friend's apartment. I told them what was wrong and what just happened. We phoned the police, but they found nothing. That was the last night I slept in that apartment. But, again, the story doesn't end here. The next day, when I went to my cousin's house, I was in the bed that she left me to sleep in, and I got another Snapchat. I still have not told anyone about this Snapchat, and I don't plan on doing that anytime soon. It was a small video taken from my apartment window. They were watching me from the window.
Number 3.
I was about 15 years old and working as a babysitter for family friends or anyone that I knew of that needed their kids watched and taken care of while they were gone. Out of all of the families and their kids, I can always remember 2 though, and not in a good way. I was babysitting a couple of kids on Saturday the 26th while their parents were out for dinner with some friends. We were down in the basement playing Destiny with some fizzy drinks and snacks while we waited for their parents to return. One of the kids, who was 8 at the time, decided to run upstairs and get some movies for us to watch. The basement was kind of like a mini apartment. It had a bedroom, bathroom, kitchen, and a supply closet with stuff that they had just in case of emergencies. The elder sister, who was 11, got kind of worried when her brother didn't come back after some time, so she asked me to go check while she waited down there with her 7-year-old brother and his twin. I slowly made my way up the stairs when the lights turned off upstairs and the boy came running down crying.
There's a man outside the house.
I froze before running to the basement window and looked out to see 2, maybe 3 figures walking towards the house. I saw the kids shaking on the couch, so I ran up and locked the basement door. The parents told me that no one was supposed to come over while they were gone, and since the boy didn't seem to know the men, I didn't want to risk anything. Everyone, into the bedroom, now. They ran into the bedroom as I turned off the TV and lights and grabbed a bag from the supply closet, rushing into the bedroom. By now, I was out of breath and pushing stuff against the door with the 4 children shaking on the bed.
I'm scared,
one of the kids cried as I finished barricading the door and turned off the bedroom lights. I walked over to them with the bag and wrapped the top blanket around them. There was knocking coming from upstairs before a window smashing. I honestly couldn't breathe at that point. I would always imagine being in this situation and being okay, but now that it was really happening, I couldn't take it. I grabbed the bag and emptied it all out as quietly as I could as the elder sister tried to calm down her brothers. There was a couple of candy bars and water, but there was also a pocket knife and some bullets, but there was no gun. I covered the twins' mouths when the basement door was kicked down and they were about to scream. I felt the little droplets of water on my hand as the twins cried. I did my best to stay calm, but I couldn't. My heart was beating faster and faster per second, and the sounds coming from wherever these guys were coming from wasn't helping. I grabbed the pocket knife and told the kids to hide under the bed. Honestly, I didn't know what else to do. I was shaking as I slowly approached the door with the blade in my hand. I stopped when I heard car doors open and close outside, followed by a scream. I ran back over to the bed and slid under the bed, covering the kids even more. I could hear whispers from outside the door and multiple footsteps run into the house and into the basement door. There was a smashing sound coming from outside the bedroom door and creaking noises probably coming from the stairs.
Kids? Are you down there?
I yelled back a yes before the door to the bedroom slowly opened to reveal the kids' parents. I was so glad they came back in time. Any longer and I thought we were goners. They apologized for putting me in this kind of situation and paid me an extra $200 and offered to drive me home. They didn't call the cops for some reason, but that's their problem, not mine. But I haven't heard anything from them. I hope they're safe and that I can still babysit their kids. Everything was fine until I went to another family who lived a few blocks down from where the other family did. I was taking care of triplets who were really nice and listened to everything I said, which really helped me in my situation. They were 8, turning 9 in a few days, which I was happy for since I basically watched all of them grow up. We were watching some anime about mages and guilds when I heard a car pull up outside the house. I thought it was the parents telling me I could go, but they had only been gone a few minutes, so that wasn't right. So when I went to check, I froze as 2 figures went out towards the door. It was them, and they knew we were home. I moved the kids upstairs and turned the TV off before running up and joining them in the parents' bedroom, since they had the only door that could lock. I had my cell phone clutched in my right hand and ready to dial the police as soon as I heard the door open or any noise that come from downstairs. I gave the phone to one of the triplets and ushered them in the closet. "Stay here," I told them as I locked the bedroom door and ran as quickly and quietly back towards the closet. They all whimpered and flinched as the sound of the door was kicked in. I held them all behind some shoeboxes and jackets as the sounds of smashing and heavy footsteps were heard from downstairs. "Call the police," I whispered, as heavy thumping noises could be heard coming up the stairs. They fiddled with the cell before one of them got a grip and phoned the cops, who said they'll be there as soon as possible. I then texted the parents to get home now, as it was an emergency. We could hear the laughter and smashing noises from down the hall, then outside the door. I held the 3 weeping kids as the door handle was fiddled with before being kicked in, and that's when a whole avalanche of fear hit me. I thought I was going to die or get raped, as well as the kids who were now crying softly into my chest and stomach. I felt like I was going to be sick as I heard a pair of footsteps slowly walk around the room and towards the closet, but luck was on my side yet again as police sirens were heard outside the house. The 2 men were arrested after being forced into the police car. I was told who they were, and it still haunts me to this day. They were known as the Kitty Brothers. They would stalk certain families and abduct their kids after they left their home, even after a short period of time, and it was both good and bad luck that I was in both houses when they came. The family apologized before paying me an extra $350 and a room to stay the night, which I happily accepted. The triplets ended up in the guest bed with me since they were so scared to sleep by themselves, and I didn't mind that at all. If I wasn't there at both times of the break-ins, then I could not even imagine what would have happened to the 2 families and their kids. I still babysit to this day, but now I always have a pocket knife on me and a gun in my backpack that I always keep as far away from the kids as I can and the police on speed dial, just in case. I can never forget what happened those 2 times while I was babysitting.
Number 2.
This didn't happen to me, but my 2 cousins. At the time this happened, my younger cousin, her name is Anna, she was 13, and my older cousin, Maya, was 17. So, my aunt, uncle, and my cousins were driving home, with my uncle driving, my aunt in the passenger seat, and my 2 cousins in the back seat. It was 10 PM, and it was really dark outside. They were in a city they don't go to that much, about 40 to 50 miles from their house, and they relied on a GPS to tell them the way back home. As they were driving through the local road, my uncle noticed that they were running out of gas and had to find a gas station immediately. So the GPS told them that there was a gas station coming up soon. My uncle took a left, following what the GPS said. The road was rocky, like the roads that go through forests that are very hard to drive on. Their car was the only car on the road, and my uncle had to turn on the headlight because it was pitch black. They all felt a little uneasy because they couldn't imagine a gas station on this road. The GPS though said that the gas station was coming up. When they reached the gas station, they saw that it wasn't much of a gas station at all. There was only 1 gas pump and no store. Literally, just 1 gas pump in the middle of nowhere. I don't even think it worked either. It looked pretty abandoned because the pump was really old and rusty. This kind of scared our family, and my uncle didn't even get outside to fill up their car because he thought it was unsafe, and my aunt was begging him not to go outside. So they kept going. They kept going forward because it was a bit of a drive back out from the rocky road, and the GPS said that the local road was coming back up in about 5 minutes. As they kept driving, they saw large trees on both sides of the road, and coming up was a huge tree that almost blocked the road, but they could still drive by it. As they kept getting closer to the tree, the GPS started blinking. My family was very scared now. When they were just a few feet away from the tree, the GPS shut down. It didn't say no signal or anything. It just shut down. My family knew something was wrong, and they couldn't turn back now because the road was so narrow, and they could only go forward. My uncle started driving slowly under the tree with a worried look on his face. Then, all of a sudden, a rock about the size of a tennis ball hit their windshield very hard and cracked it. My little cousin started crying, and my uncle drove really fast till they got back onto the local road, which was like 100 feet away from that tree. The GPS came back on. They were very relieved to be back on the main road and went to a more populated gas station that seemed normal. When they got home, my uncle said they were never going back on a rocky, lonely road again. To this day, they wonder what was in that forest. They knew that the rock didn't just randomly fall from a tree because they saw that it hit the car like someone was standing in front of the car throwing a rock at their windshield. And why did their GPS locate an abandoned gas pump? And why did it go out when they went near the tree? They told me right when they got home, they threw that GPS away because something didn't seem right about it. My family believes that something is in that forest, especially under that tree. But what's odd is who would be in that pitch black forest standing in front of their car throwing rocks at them? Anyway, moral of the story, never go on a rocky road that's dark, and always make sure your gas tank is full when you have a long way to go.
Number 1.
Here's a bit of background. I'm a 24-year-old girl living in the northern part of South Africa in a very regional place. I still live with my